Yeah, thank you so much for having us on, really for everyone at the foundation, LF0 Foundation, and for everyone listening in today. Everything will be available on YouTube not so long after this, so don't feel the need to frantically scribble down notes, and there'll be a cool leave behind with the actual farm planning calculator. Yeah, so if you want to follow us, we're at Kintsu XYZ _XYZ on Twitter, formerly known, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And today we're going to do a little DEX, farms, and LSTs DeFi uh, class. And I think this is going to take you from zero to hero on DeFi, liquidity mining, and the strategy behind asset pairing selection. Yep, goals for today are to educate the next wave of liquidity miners, solidify builders on how to plan and execute farms, and help establish a more efficient DeFi ecosystem here on LF0 by incorporating staking rewards into everything. Like you saw before, we'll kind of break this into 5 sections where there's a DEX overview, go through liquidity pools, building up to talking about farms, actually planning a campaign, and how to look at selecting routing tokens. Cool. Yep. So I think a lot of people here are super familiar with DEXs. Swapping, pooling, and farming are usually the 3 key parts of a basic DEX, and we'll be mainly talking about this Uni v2 structure to build on top of that. There's really incredibly exciting things happening in the private compliance space with advanced Dutch auctions on top of these types of structures with common and invariant making and concentrated liquidity pools. But for the sake of today, we'll just kind of keep this liquidity mining conversation to a basic Uni v2 structure. So before anyone can swap, there needs to be a pool. I like to use examples of apples and watermelons because watermelons are kind of larger than apples. So if you had let's suppose that Alice starts a pool for apples and watermelons by adding 12 apples and 4 watermelons. Let's say that she receives back 10 AWLP tokens. This is a receipt token that represents Alice's share of this apples and watermelons pool. So just for really base level understanding, pools function on this well-known model called the Uniswap constant product algorithm. The total of the pool, this would be 12 times 4, 48 would stay the same when the swaps happen. Basically, 48 would still be the product. This is true even when swapping and adding and removing happens in the same ratio. Yep. So right now, Alice is our only liquidity provider in this pool. But suppose Bob shows up and in same proportions, adds 3 apples and 1 watermelon, taking the total pool to 15 apples and 5 melons. Notably, 1 melon would be 3 apples. Yep. So Bob has 2.5 LP tokens, which would be a quarter of what Alice has. So we're going to now talk about swaps. Basically, with the 15 apples and 5 watermelons here, the K is equal to 75. So if you wanted to swap to buy 1 watermelon, right? You just want to buy 1 watermelon, you would know that the pool would go down from 5 watermelons to 4. So if there's 4 watermelons, you have to figure out, you solve for K with the amount of apples, the amount of watermelons being 4, trying to solve for the amount of apples. So basically 75 divided by 4 is 18.75 apples, which is 3.75 more than is already in the pool. And that's how much would have to be swapped. And I'm kind of skipping the swap fee that all LP providers get, which is a very important part. It's for simplicity. But yeah, 3.75 is bigger than three by a pretty significant margin. And we're talking about a small pool of apples and watermelons here right now as an example, but I think it starts to illustrate the point that this slippage problem, like slippage just joining the chat, is like a major issue to consider. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at today. I'll share these calculations after, but just for some quick context, if you're looking at a pool that's not, 5 watermelons and 15 apples, instead you're thinking about something that's like maybe $50,000 or $100,000 of assets in a pool. Like a trade that's 2.5% slippage would be like around like short of $700. If it was $100,000 pool, you're talking about like $1,300 within that 2.5% slippage. It's a real problem. So how do you actually decrease slippage? And there's a lot of different ways. And I feel like, on-chain order books, like common concentrated liquidity protocols, like Invariant, these all offer additional solutions. I think the answer is like D, all of the above. Like you'd want to use a lot of these different things, and we're going to specifically cover liquidity mining as an approach to this today. Just like quick history, liquidity mining kind of comes from these like origins of like compound synthetics, sushi swap, here in finance and others. Basically, you have like those LP tokens with the receipts that we looked at before, and you stake them to earn governance. So now like the LPs and the farms would have like a swap revenue and incremental revenue of staking rewards in what we call a farm or liquidity mining campaign. And this creates an additional incentive to provide and lock liquidity, which kind of enhances the stability and like swappability of new tokens and growing and scaling tokens. Really like you're distributing, like as the DAO, you're distributing governance rights to active ecosystem participants and creating network effects as the community earn votes. There's a lot of stuff that's like kind of similar to this in traditional finance, but this is like a fully on-chain structure. And it's really beautiful. So basically, many people probably have participated in farms or liquidity mining campaigns or now will. But I think to look at this as the DAO actually launching that campaign and like structuring and planning it, I think there's, you have to look at it from the other side. And usually like DAOs are creating their tokenomics, and liquidity mining is just like one line item. Some other things like airdrops, different allocations are a part of that. And there's definitely some sophisticated planning that can go into it, but when you know how to do it, it's actually pretty simple. So I think of this a lot like Google ad campaigns, but instead of driving clicks or conversions, you're trying to enhance your on-chain liquidity. So I think the right way to approach this is to basically benchmark reasonable goals. So if you remember those tables that we looked at a few slides back, and we'll see that in like kind of a live environment in a second. You might set a reasonable goal of having like, you want people to make 500, you want people to be able to make a $500 swap for some small amount of slippage. You'd want to look at like what your pair is, which we're also going to get to later, and get a sense of like, what do you realistically have to incentivize? Like what kind of incentive would actually attract liquidity and how much would it attract? So you're going to want to look at comps, like, this house is worth X and the one next door is the same. So maybe it's also worth X. So really like, what's the ballpark amount of liquidity that your pair needs is kind of a response to this like first question here. And you're going to kind of want to plan these campaigns on a monthly or quarterly basis. Definitely anticipate iterating and evolving throughout the process. But once you launch these things, the campaigns are immutable. So just definitely it's worth doing the upfront planning. So let's kind of come back to this example here. Suppose that the apples and watermelons pool is now 3 different liquidity providers: Alice, Bob, and Charlie. And further that Alice is 50%, Bob and Charlie are both 25%. And we're going to like run through an example now. So suppose that Watermelons DAO naturally makes a farm for Apple's Watermelons LP. And the liquidity mining campaign is scheduled to basically give away 100 watermelons per day to grow the liquidity in this pair. Technically, there'd be like a per second amount of watermelons that's being distributed equally to everyone who's in the farm. So we're just going to run through a quick little example here. Maybe that might have been sort of this slide. So Charlie stakes his LP tokens into the vault or into the farm. And yeah, since it's 100 watermelons per day and Charlie's the only staker, he's going to be getting all of that. Usually these liquidity mining campaigns are a way to scale your liquidity. So what you're hoping to see is someone like Donna shows up. And I'll make sure I answer all questions. If anyone wants to stop me, please do. But yeah, the goal really is to attract more liquidity providers. This is like an economic exploration of how this would work. So Donna joins and would be adding more apples and watermelons to the pool and gets her LP tokens that we see here. So let's further say that Donna goes and like stakes her LP tokens into the farm. That makes a total of 25 LP tokens that have been staked in. So Charlie's now getting like 20%, Donna's getting 80% of that. And Alice and Bob follow. And they also stake their LP tokens, bringing the total amount to 40 now, I think. And everyone will be getting their like pro rata share of the daily rewards, equally with the amount that they actually put into the farms. In like basic liquidity mining campaigns, and there's so much opportunity for like variation here, but you can usually stake and unstake at any point in time. So before I said that liquidity mining campaigns are kind of like Google ads for enhancing your on-chain liquidity and bootstrapping or scaling your liquidity. So as you're thinking about like actually making a DAO, you're going to do something unique, something special, something on-chain, and then like maybe you have a governance token and you want to actually have people able to trade it. So really the goal today is to understand how that works. And this is a Google sheet that everyone can kind of have access to after the presentation. You can link it in the show notes or something, but let's say that you go through the whole tokenomics exercise, and at the end of the day, you're going to, let's say, plan 10,000 tokens per month for liquidity mining incentives. So like if you do, there's like swap fees that people are going to earn, and this is kind of analyzing and helping you plan what you'll get from that farm, helping set expectations. So like on top of the swap fees, when people stake their LP, if $100,000 worth of LP was staked in, that would actually be generating an incremental 130% for those LP tokens. So you kind of want to like find like the sweet spot based on comps, like similar protocols pairing with similar assets might get a certain APR. So you kind of like have to find what that is. It's like very high APR. Sometimes you have to pay for volatile pairs. With like more stable pairs, it's usually lower APRs. And then we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but like if you kind of incorporate liquid staking tokens into your pair, you kind of get these like LSTi ecosystems, which is like a very vogue concept right now. I think it's going to be how most proof of stake networks grow, and I think we're really excited to help be a part of this type of thing evolving as the Alex Zero DeFi ecosystem advances. But basically, as like like the amount of like stake into the farm goes to infinity, which we'd all love to see, but like theoretically, as it goes to infinity, the actual rewards you provide, the APR goes to zero. But if you have a pairing instead of with gas with an LST, like Kintsu's SA0, for example, like you are actually pairing with something that's like providing yet another reward stream. It's also the option of pairing with stable coins, but I think I got ahead of step here. But yeah, like basically, I think there's three options like when you're thinking about pairing. So now you have your governance and you have a framework for thinking about how the actual liquidity mining campaign can be planned, but you should think about now what are you pairing with? So I think there's really a lot of options, and I'm going to focus on three categories today. There's pairing with a stable coin. I think that this kind of the reason you might do that is because you want the pair to be extra stable. You might also, and I think this is the most popular thing, you'd pair with like the network gas token, like A0, or ETH on Ethereum. Early days of Ethereum, they didn't even have liquid staking tokens like what Lido, Rocket Pool, and more provide today. I think these are really incredible protocols. But so like if you pair with a gas token, like if the gas token goes up, like likely everything paired with it is also going to have that upward momentum. If the token goes down, then it's going to have that same downward momentum. A stable coin will kind of have that stability. The gas token has the upside. Liquid staking tokens are basically like super gas tokens. They are better collateral because they earn the staking reward rate. Kind of allows you to stake and use. So by pairing with a liquid staking token like Kintsu's SA0, you earn the upside and also the staking yield, which you kind of saw as those lines started diverging in the previous slide. Like I think I mentioned this before, but like early blockchains didn't even have LSTs in the beginning, right? So like Ethereum went to proof of stake a couple of years, few years into its life cycle. So like Lido started emerging then to solve this problem, and I think we have the opportunity to build a better, more efficient ecosystem where you're not like when you use an LST, those tokens are staying staked and increasing network security. They're also earning rewards. If you have to like fight against the opportunity cost of like staking, it makes it more challenging for protocols to grow. So by like kind of pairing with an LST, you're enhancing security, and you're also pairing with super collateral. Just as a really quick one on this, like this is a 2 or 3 minute thing on how LSTs work. So basically, if a user stakes like 10 A0, they're going to receive back 10 SA0 on like day 0 of the protocol. It'll be 1-to-1, but over time, an SA0 should theoretically earn the staking rewards rate and kind of increase in value versus the gas token, in line with the APR of the staking rewards minus any fees charged. So like, basically you see this kind of like beautiful loop happen where we actually stake to a growing decentralized distributed set of validator nodes, leveraging the substrate nomination pools and really advanced like runtime support that LF0 is working to incorporate into testnet and mainnet. The like if you kind of wait over time, you can kind of see where the value is here. So for the sake of example, I just kind of have a year pass. So you can imagine that like, these 55 tokens that are staked earn rewards. And let's just pretend that like all at once after a year, they like earn their rewards. So like the tokens actually go back to the vault. The LSTs are kind of like shares of a tokenized staking pool, really. So the total amount of the pool just grew without the amount of shares going up. And you're kind of like minting shares of a liquid staking pool by participating in liquid staking protocols like Kintsu's. So now each one of these tokens, the shares, your LST SA0 is worth 1.1 A0. So yeah, I think that's the majority of it. I'll kind of wrap up with 2 or 3 quick slides, and then we can have some time for any questions if there are some. But in conclusion, liquidity mining structures are definitely a key building block for DeFi. They're very powerful for bootstrapping and scaling on-chain liquidity. Many teams use farms like, too aggressively or not at all. And I think both of these can be really expensive mistakes. So I wanted to make sure we empower the community with like knowing how to think through like participating in liquidity mining campaigns and builders for how to think about planning them as part of a DAO. We're here to help. Together we're stronger. Make sure, that you always remember like nothing is without smart contract risk. Composability is like definitely one of Web3 superpowers though. And I think liquidity mining campaigns are an incredible example of that. Yeah, I think I spoke about some of these other things, like, the answer is all of the above. Like you want to see liquidity mining structures applied to even more advanced types of DEXs, like common or invariant and stuff like that. And a lot of this conversation applies to more advanced structures. For any hackers out there, like I think there's some really interesting ideas to be built that kind of build on top of LSTs, but I'll just kind of leave that one um, for anyone who wants it. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Feel free to follow us at Kintsu_XYZ on X, and I am at Stephen Labs in most places. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. We have a couple of questions. First one, is it visible? Okay. Yeah, why farm APR going down for farm TVL increments?
It's a great question. Basically, like, if you come back to this concept that like if you're giving away 100 watermelons like per day to incentivize your liquidity, if there's like, only 10 LP tokens staked, those 10 LP tokens are going to get all 100 watermelons per day. But if all of a sudden 4 times the amount of LP tokens are staked, well, they're actually getting only a piece of that each. So you have a fixed amount of rewards and a growing amount of LP tokens to share it across. So the APR is actually going down. And I think that these things usually tend to harmonize at some point. And I think that's where a lot of the comps and research come from. Does that start to explain how at least I would think about that? I think that's the key takeaway. And then I think the second question here, you're looking at the Q&A, was about MEV. I think that MEV is a very interesting topic, but I think privacy does a fantastic job of fighting a lot of MEV. And there's some really cool things about Aleph BFT and the way it deals with like transaction ordering that I think it makes it extremely MEV resistant. But I think that there's some really great mad scientists and PhDs to speak to about this one if you're curious to learn more. Great, thank you. If that's all the questions, all good for now. Always here to help, and thank you so much for letting us speak today.